G'day, Nick Ruddenklau, farm manager of Epasco Farms out at Condingup. I'm also chair of ASHEEP and Beef.
Enoch Bergman, Swans Veterinary Services, based in Esperance, WA, and also home of ASHEEP and Beef.
It started with a bit of a chat down the pub regarding everyone's weaning times and understanding where we were at and wanting to make our system as efficient as we could. With our season down in Esperance where we farm, it's always challenging to get calves weaned onto good feed at that end of the season. So we were hoping that maybe we could bring it back a couple of months or a month and trying to get that extra clover and grass into them at the end of the spring. There's a lot of different systems down here. Some people are grass feeding, some people are selling stores, some people are backgrounding. It was all pretty attractive to try and shorten up that period of time the calves were on the cows and get that better feed into them at the end of the spring.
It's a huge biological expense to make milk, and calves, once they're over about 5 months of age, struggle to digest it adequately. It's still beneficial, still tastes great, still has lots of energy, but a lot of it's wasted. So what we were thinking is if we can wean a bit earlier and look after these calves, and that requires having enough protein and enough energy to replace what the mother was giving it in the milk, then that means we can be a bit harder on those mothers, and then overall we should be able to produce more kilograms of beef per hectare off the same resources.
The hard thing is knowing where to start. You have a chat to someone else, another producer, and they say, oh, I went at this date, and you go, oh, I went at this date, and you don't really know why you are sometimes or how it works.
So there's two components of when you should wean, hypothetically. One is monitoring the body condition score of your cows. If your cows are starting to slip, that's a bit of a trigger. But beyond that is looking at your feed wedge. So what's the season look like? How much feed do I have in front of me? What resources do I have to look after those cows? And if you've got a dry season coming up and your paddocks are pretty flogged out and you got very little residual feed that you can feed out, which we had a couple of years like that recently, you can save your bacon by weaning earlier because you can protect the body condition of those cows. That next pregnancy is already in there, so you can't change that one. But the pregnancy after that, it could have a pretty significant impact if you abuse those cows by trying to look after the calf for too long.
The trial was set up, we took our traditional weaning date minus 60 days off that, weaned a mob of our first calving heifers on that date. Basically, we weighed and condition scored our cows and then took every second calf off and weaned every second calf. We then yard weaned with our traditional yard weaning method, so 5 to 7 days depending on the temperament of the calves. Hay, clean water, working them through the yards every day, cobalt, selenium, copper, booster vaccinations. All 3 years we had conserved pasture to wean the calves onto. We used ryegrass and clover the first year, second year we used good subclover pasture, and the third year we used kale, ryegrass, clover mix. The first year was a pretty tough season. The quality of the pasture pretty much finished up the 30 days after we weaned, just due to a really poor season. And the same in the second year to a point. And then the third year, the quality held, but it was a tough time of year to be weaning for us. That end of spring can be pretty brutal down in Esperance. And then the 60 days later, we brought the mob back in, weighed the calves that were weaned early, weighed the calves that were freshly weaned, and weighed and condition scored the cows.
The key measurables were obviously the weight of the calves, so we weighed all the calves at the initial weaning event. We then re-weighed them at the subsequent weaning event and then captured the difference in weight gain between those two periods of time, which was, we were shooting for 60 days. Some years it was shorter due to the season, but then we also at the initial weaning weighed all the cows and body condition scored all the cows, and then at the subsequent weaning we then again re-weighed and estimated the body condition score of all the cows, but we also identified them as either dry or wet, and we assumed that the dry calf had already been weaned in the previous weaning. Everyone that stayed in the trial, we experimented with different things.
Simon at Chilwell, they fed a ration, their normal grain and silage ration that they fed to the weaned calves in confinement.
I really liked what Ryan did. Because of the way we designed the trial, we still had to look after those cows that had the calves that were still swinging on them. And the cows whose calves had been weaned early were still cohabitating that same paddock with them. In all of the data sets, except for 2, the cows continued to gain weight even though they had calves on them. In the final year, Ryan was able to identify the girls that had been weaned early, and he took those girls and he stuck them on very limited feed and was able to maintain their weight in comparison to the ones who he was continuing to look after with substantially more feed and better feed. The exciting aspect of the trial was that we definitely protected the body condition of the cows whose calves had been weaned earlier. But the caveat to that is that in almost all instances, it was a detriment to the calves.
The weight gain of the cows, that was really massive. That showed the condition score gain, and the weight gain of those cows was double in most respects to the ones that hadn't been weaned. That really highlighted to us the energy it takes to make milk at that time of year.
I'd presumed that we would be able to keep those calves rolling that were weaned earlier from their mothers, but the seasons that we had represented a pretty significant challenge. So the calves that stayed on their mothers had the advantage of being in a good paddock because we were continuing to look after their dams, and also had the advantage of the milk from their mothers. They had the best of both worlds compared to those that were weaned earlier. In most instances, the calves were lighter that had been weaned earlier.
The early weaned calves were noticeably lighter at the second weaning, and after a period of time they did catch up, but unfortunately it didn't always work in the favour of the farmer because of their time of marketing their cattle.
We found folks that were weaning straight off mum, putting them in the yards and then putting them on a truck to a feedlot. They couldn't overcome that weight check that would occur to those calves if they were weaned earlier than their siblings. The PDS helped producers to understand if they needed to keep their calves moving forward after being weaned, like if we get in a drought type situation, that it requires a reasonable amount of effort. That we've got to really look after that protein and carbohydrate intake. And so some guys developed different strategies, whether it be lick feeders and grain supplementation or growing specific forage.
If we have a terrible spring and it's catastrophic, then getting those calves off as early as we can. We now understand what we have to do to keep those calves growing with nutrition and looking after them really well. But the cows will maintain on lower quality feeds and a lot less of it and get through that period.
When you're managing livestock in an enterprise and so many things change, the price of commodities, the price of urea, if you're trying to get your grass to grow a little bit quicker, all these things factor in. And so you've got to be kind of nimble and I guess understanding better the biomechanics of producing milk. It's not a free asset. It is biologically quite expensive to make.
I think beforehand everyone weaned on a certain date because that was the date they weaned, and this has really given us some critical knowledge of why we do it at the time we do it. It's not just because that's when the feedlotters want the calves or it seemed like the right thing to do because we weren't harvesting yet or something like that. So now we really know that if we are going earlier, we are sacrificing weight in those calves, but we're gaining feed and paddocks back. And if we're going later, we are definitely wasting energy, but it may work for some people. So
giving people triggers to have flexibility within their business. Flexibility drives profitability. I function as an observer producer. Weaning about 600 calves a year. I, over time, moved to weaning earlier, but I also grain supplement through lick feeders. And that's worked for me. So I've been able to go through pretty tough seasons and been able to protect the body condition of my cows. And I guess the PDS maybe gave me a bit more confidence to do that. So in my enterprise, because I hold on to them for an extra year, so I try to get them up to about 450 kilos the following year and then sell them to a feedlotter that likes them a bit heavier. So for my production system, it works. I think the real key takeaway is that it takes a lot of energy to produce milk, and calves, once they're over about 5 months of age, struggle to digest it. However, we've got to keep these calves moving forward, so you got to fit that into your production system. Yes, it is more expensive to keep that cow lactating, but maybe if your production system is designed around weaning them straight onto a truck, maybe that's your only option. So it's another tool in the toolbox depending on the feed that's in front of us, the feed we've got stored, and the body condition score of the cows. If we factor all those three things in, producers can tailor their time of weaning to suit their enterprise.
Dealing with the challenges that we had, and MLA obviously were really great to work with. It's good to see your levy money going somewhere that's practical and tangible that we can see. So thanks to MLA and the team there.
If you're a local producer and you're doing something pretty neat, take it to your local producer group. If you don't have a local producer group, start one. And then once you have, sign up with MLA's producer demonstration sites and get out there and disseminate that information. Don't just help your friends, help the world.